Hello, this is Jackie B. Peterson. I'm your host today on Solo Pro Radio. And before we get going with our guest today, I'd like to invite you to come to the website of Better, Smarter, Richer, 7 Business Principles for Encore, Solo, and Creative Entrepreneurs. You know, there is just a rise in the number of people 50-plus starting businesses, or as I like to say, my mantra is, if you can't find the job you want, go create it. So solopreneurship is one of the fastest growing business models in the country. The Small Business Administration tells us that fully 78% of businesses never hire an employee. So solopreneurship, your time is now. But you need some guidance, and that's what we give in the Better, Smarter, Richer program. So take a look. Go to the website, bettersmarterricher.com, and look for the coming events and listen to some of these wonderful radio shows that we've had. So my guest today is Carleen Mackay, and Carleen is an expert on issues around the changing workforce in America. She's a sought-after speaker, a prolific writer, and a career counselor. She's one of the founders of Ageless in America and the author or co-author of 6 books on the subject of the new workforce, including Plan B for Boomers, Boom or Bust, New Career Strategies in a New America, and Return of the Boomers. Carleen presents herself as the voice of the mature workforce. I love that. Welcome, Carleen. Hello.
Well, good morning, Jackie.
I'm so glad you could be with us today, Carleen. I just think this is very exciting. I love this, Ageless in America and Boom or Bust, New Career Strategies. I think we're going to have a great discussion.
Great, me too.
So, Carleen, tell us about yourself, your background, your career, your journey that led you into career counseling, and certainly into your the specialty that you have today in the working with the changing workforce. So tell us your story.
I can do this in about 3 minutes, but it's a long career. Remember, I'm in my 76th year, still working full-time, and I am a solopreneur, as you promote. I do not do career counseling. I'm really the coach of the coaches and the organizations. So at one point in my career, I did counsel, and then I found I didn't have a big enough audience for what was coming with the changing workplace and the workforce. So I said, maybe I can find another way to help people in a broader sense with many people in a room instead of one at a time. So basically, I was a child of the 50s, if you would. Went into human resources after college because that's what was available to women then, and liked it for the years that I was in it, watched the industrial age change, was part of the founding times of Apple Computer and started noticing those things. Ultimately went into career work and became a vice president of a major career management company. And then as time marched on, I knew that I would have to make some changes. My husband took ill and felt, I'm going to have to work later than a lot of folks. And so I started looking at the future. I started by studying demographics and economics as a secondary backup, and I realized that we were ill-prepared for a future that was going to be very dominated for many years by the boomer generation. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
That's great. That's great. Your story is wonderful. So the work that I have often followed is that of Ken Dykewald, Age Wave, and I like to say to people that we've known for a long time that the baby boomer generation was a huge population kind of moving like a the meal through the python, this big lump of people coming through. And we've known that for a long time, but the thing that we didn't expect was that the population mostly was going to be people who are energetic, curious, interested, healthy, still participating in the world. This is not our grandparents' retirement by any means. And
right.
It's very different. So unusual. We just did not expect what is happening to us today. So, Carleen, in your bio, you talk about having lived in many places around the world and that your travels have influenced you to have a broad, global, future-focused interest in how people live. So talk about that. Is this a global phenomenon we're dealing with?
Pardon me?
Is this a global phenomenon we're dealing with?
Oh, my gosh. It's more a global phenomenon than most people realize. And I'll tell you a couple of stories there, too. I love storytelling. It seems to me that that's the way people really listen. My husband was an engineer, and he wanted to bring automation to the plastics and metals industry and looked around the U.S. for an opportunity in a group of owners that might want a fully automated factory. And guess where he found it? Not Oregon, not California, not the Midwest. He found the most automated plan for a factory in Penang, Malaysia.
Wow.
And people say, where? The small island on the west coast of Malaysia. We went there, and the Chinese and the Americans were co-venturers in this particular project. And when we got there to this remote place that felt like we were pioneers indeed, we were stunned. IBM, Apple, a few others were already there. And so I looked at that and thought, what are they doing in this funny little remote place? And then I looked at his plant, and I saw that it was fully automated and that the people they needed to do the work weren't the lower paid labor force that everybody associates with places like Penang, Malaysia, but a highly skilled labor force and much smaller than the very plants he had run in the U.S. and other markets. So that's what really was the first influence, was I was stunned. I was stunned. And here's the story, and I don't know if it's true or not, but it's a good story. It tells of the time that somebody was playing golf with their host in India. And he was on a new golf course and a little nervous because he knew that in the rough there could be snakes and what have you. And so he said to his host, where should I aim? And the Indian host said, aim between the IBM and Hewlett-Packard buildings. This was India in the 80s, 1980s. And so what really struck me was, I wonder how many people would ever even know where Penang is or other places like this that are doing very, very advanced work. So that was part of it. The other part of it was that I was a vice president of a large career management firm and had responsibility for a southeastern region. So I was in different places in the southeast all the time. And what I saw in each place was what was happening there. And I started, kind of clicking in. So the final story that I would tell you about this, so we can go on, I was assigned to work with a major telecommunications firm that was laying off, we'll leave them nameless, over 20,000 people.
Wow.
And I went, how will I do this? And so I looked at making kind of classroom environments to help these people go through. But what I noticed, you asked the question, what did I notice and how was I influenced? They're mostly engineers. Mm-hmm. And I thought, what a waste. These are people who really invest in their future. So those kinds of life events really influenced me to pay attention to what the changes were that really affected work. I hope that answers your question.
Oh, it does. It does. But certainly what I'm hearing, Carleen, is that your view is pretty big. It's pretty global. You're not just speaking from, the clients with whom you were dealing with in the U.S. You're speaking from a broad, this is a broad international change to the workforce that is taking place.
Jackie, it's huge. It's huge. I want you to look up, or maybe your listeners might choose to look up Generations United.
Okay.
Which is an international effort of people of all ages, Generations United, to help reach a future that has some good things attached to it, not just the gloom and doom that we hear so much about. I'm excited about Generations United. In fact, their international conference will be in Honolulu next year, so I look forward to having a small part of that stage.
All right. Well, we'll talk about that. I like that. I don't know much about them, but we will have to learn.
Please
so you know what you came and have talked about, the vision that you came to, are major changes in the workforce that have taken place. So can you talk to our listeners about what's happened to the workforce, let's say since the year 2000?
Well, I'd like to even take you back to a few years a little earlier. And again, I'll mention a book since you like to write, and I do. And the book is the 70s, a decade that changed America. And for me, in the 70s, before we went to Malaysia, late 70s, I was there when Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, I was in Northern California, launched their little business with $300, I might add. And I looked at this thing, this computer, that before this had been a huge mainframe, and I saw something that many people didn't see. I saw that it would connect people wherever they happened to be. That was the 70s. So if you read that book, the 70s, a decade that changed America, it changed then. But did anyone notice? Of course not, because it takes years of shift for it to start to have an influence on the general population. Since 2000, here's a couple of interesting statistics. Please look them up and call me a liar if I'm wrong.
No.
No, but I always tell people that because, you know, you look up statistics and you can look up any statistic any way you want it to read practically. So here's the one that I think is important. In the year 2000, by the year 2000, 40 to 50% of the jobs we held in the 20th century were either gone or so materially changed that they were gone for the boomers. So part of the struggle has been, and it's only part, but it has to do with the fact that their skills, they thought experience was the big thing. And I can remember when I was in human resources, if you change jobs more than 2 or 3 times in a working lifetime, we thought of you as a job hopper.
Right.
And frankly, what started happening around 2000, the more and more employers were saying, if you haven't changed, you're probably too set in your ways for us.
Yes.
And I started listening to that, and gosh, Jackie, it was amazing that people weren't getting it that fast. It took me a long time to realize why, by the way.
Do you want to talk about that?
Well, sure. You know the old saying about change, for example, adapting to change. You know, you go first, right? There's a change, but that's okay, Jackie. You go ahead. You go first. I still see people who will spend years, quite literally years, sending resumes to jobs nobody's going to hire them for.
Yes.
And in fact, as you know, there are so many options. Look at you. Look at me. Who would have thought that the options, market-driven, by the way, not just passion-driven, market-driven options, were going to be so bountiful, but they are.
Right. They are.
So how are we adapting? You know, I don't know. Some are adapting beautifully, more and more as time goes by, but not enough yet because, for example, in I'll speak of another state and leave them nameless as well. In one state that's quite nearby to you, over 100,000 boomers have moved home with their parents. And everybody says to me, oh, to take care of their parents, right, Carleen? I said, no, it's for the parents to take care of them.
Oh, that's horrible.
And that, it is, but it's true. And it's stunning when you think about that, when you have a 50-year-old coming home to a 75-year-old parent.
Wow.
Everybody loses and everybody wins in different ways.
I had not heard that one at all. How terrible.
Look it up.
You know, I agree the world is changing. I know reports I read say, you know, that we're training children now to do jobs that don't even exist yet. And you know, and so we're trying to figure out what's going to be coming next, and that resiliency and flexibility and the ability to ask the right question, to read a situation, to be